G'day everyone. Welcome back to the Toon podcast, the Southern Hemisphere's biggest and best podcast. All things Newcastle United, off to an absolute flyer as per usual. Joined by Jack and Dimi. Boys, how are we?
You go for Dimi.
Good, mate. I'm happy the season's back, to be honest, because in our local season here, footy's just turned to shit for me. So I'm glad. I'm glad that Newcastle can bring back some life into my sporting following.
Jack,
yeah,
how are
also
you,
good,
mate?
also good. Enjoying these games, even though they're a bit shit, to be honest. It's nice to have the season back, like Dimi said. So, and I've got a good strategy. I'm managing to go to sleep before them as well,
Yes.
so I'm not staying up all the way through. So
Ambitious.
it's working well. Yeah,
Glad
it's
you've
working
seen the
well so
light.
far.
Yeah, that's my play. So, yeah, happy that you've taken my advice on board. But I guess we'll start here. I was thinking about this today, and I don't want to come across as hyperbolic or anything like that, but it's probably the biggest week in the season of Newcastle United coming up in the next 7 days. I don't think that's too overreactive or hyperbolic or anything like that. I think what happens in the next, we're probably into 6 days now, is probably going to have a massive impact on what happens for the rest of the season. So we started off with a 1-1 draw at Bournemouth. Not quite the graveyard shift for us here in the Eastern Seaboard in Australia, but not far off at the 11 p.m. School night kickoff is never fun. Probably only worsened by the 2 o'clock kickoff on a school night, which is probably the graveyard shift. But it was a 2 o'clock kickoff in the UK, which is it's a bit of a weird time, I think, for the first game on a Sunday. Anyway, so I never understand why they play the early game on the Saturday, but they can't somehow coordinate an early game on a Sunday night as well, given so many teams, maybe not involving us, but teams that are in close proximity to each other. You'd think there'd be a couple of 9:30 kickoffs. I think they do it in Scotland. I think I've watched a few Scotland Premier League games every now and then on a Sunday night, so I'm not sure why we can't do it in the EPL. But we've got a fair bit to get through tonight, so it's probably best we stop the junk chat and rip the Band-Aid off and get stuck into it. The lineup. So there were 2 changes to the first game. Emil Kraft replaced the suspended Fabian Schär, and Lloyd Kelly made his I guess starting debut for the club against his old club, replacing Lewis Hall. I don't think Kelly was maybe a little bit of a surprise, I guess, after Lewis Hall. He wasn't as bad as no one else. Like, he wasn't absolutely stinked it up in the first game, but the bench was a bit of a surprise for me, Dimi. The Martin Dubravka omission was I think raised eyebrows pretty early, but then I think it was quickly put to bed that he'd suffered a concussion during the week of training, which has ruled him out. I'm not 100% sure of the concussion protocols in the EPL. I should be, but I'm tipping it'd be pretty similar to what we've got here in the AFL with a mandatory 12-day sitting out period, which normally means 1 game a week, but it might be 2 for him given the League Cup fixture on Wednesday night. But John Ruddy over your fellow compatriot Dimi of Vlachodimos. Well, how do you feel about that? Putting your patronage to one side for a second.
Yeah, obviously something's going on that we don't know, but it just reading the tea leaves, the transfer was a weird one. I mean, there was no link to Odysseus, and it was sort of a strange signing. And obviously, when we signed him, we sold Anderson to Forest. It was a bit of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge, brown paper bag sort of deal. And
hey, we're not Carlton, mate. Calm down.
Well, when the owner of Nottingham Forest, who I've spoken about a few times, when he deals in a lot of these sort of dealings in Greece, so not surprising that this one went down. But yeah, it's obviously he's not part of Eddie's plans whatsoever, and the deal was only made to make Forest sort of purchase Anderson off us and help us with our own PSR. So to see Ruddy there, obviously, it is a bit of a surprise, but I think it's quite clear from what's happened in the last couple of weeks in terms of the training on the bench last week as well. It wasn't Odysseus. It's clear this guy's not long for the club, and could have a very, very short stint as a Newcastle United player. I think at the very least he'll be loaned out, but if not, I'm not even sure the rules if you can sell him off and he's able to be registered for somebody else. Obviously, the registrations haven't gone in yet for the league, so he may be able to be sold on, but I doubt that. Probably a loan is probably more realistic.
Yeah, Jack, quick one for you, mate. Is he worth 10 points?
Well, I'm holding Dimi personally responsible for this because I don't know what's going on. It's like Dimi said, it's just a PSR workaround. I think.
So he's worth 10
pretty-
points, isn't he?
He's
It was
worth 10
either
points.
buy him or cop the penalty. So they've decided to buy him.
Very valuable. Very
He
valuable
saved us
member.
10 points.
I'd love to have been a fly on the wall for these conversations because at one point it was like, oh, we're going to get Alanga, who's a player who might actually have been useful.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, here's this goalkeeper. And initially it was there's 5 million, and then it was up to 20 million. People have been saying.
Yeah.
So who knows? But it's just like Dimi said, he's obviously not fancied. So I think he's able to go to another club in Europe, but he can't sign for another Premier League club. But no other Premier League club's going to want him, obviously. But so I think Anderlecht was linked with or something. So the goalkeeping whole situation has just been a bit of a mess. I think because of this, we were linked with James Trafford back in June, and then that didn't happen. And I don't think the plan would have been for Dubravka to still be here either. So it's a bit of a mess, really, to have John Ruddy on the bench for the second game. But let's just hope and pray Nick Pope's shoulder stays in where it's supposed to stay, because it will be a big trouble if he gets injured again right now.
Happily to pay my membership towards some Elastoplast tape and tape the whole thing to his feet so he can't actually dislocate it anymore. One more, I guess, quick talking point of the bench. Ringo was still on the bench. Jack, Tino kept his spot, so he did get through 45 minutes midweek, I think, with the under-21s, but couldn't quite crack the starting lineup at the moment.
Yeah, that's obviously been a big story as well, I think. But I think he showed when he came on. I've been very vocal about the fact that people are just writing him off so easily. Like Kieran Trippier, he's unquestionably the best fullback that I've seen at Newcastle in my time. And let's be fair, for 6 months he was injured pretty much. Then for 18 months he was properly world class. And then for the last 6 months he was injured and out of form and having this personal stuff going on. But he's not become a bad football player overnight. He's been one of our best players for the last 2 years. So, and he's getting on. But he proved when he came on what a player he is. So he's so valuable, and even for Tino learning. So we'll see what happens. But I think we'll be short if he does go. He's obviously got everything going on in his personal life, which that article was very much not about him sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
All right, we'll get out of that sort of stuff. We'll get stuck into the game. The first 20 minutes, I thought we started pretty good. I think it was a lot more of an improvement to what the first 20 minutes were even last week when we had 11, and I think that's probably the only thing you can really compare it to. You can't really compare it to what happened after Shah got sent off last week. But Dimi, what did you think of the first kind of 20 minutes? Did you think we kind of calm, were playing well, controlled the game and things like that?
Yeah, we looked in total control, in my opinion. I thought in transition we looked very dangerous with Isaac drifting out wide, and he put a couple of delicious crosses in that on another day somebody would have been there to finish off, and he looked very sharp early on. And we looked, even the midfield three looked like they were linking up pretty well. Bruno and Joe Linton were sort of playing nice 1-2s and releasing one another. So in the first 15, 20 minutes, we didn't really have a threat going the other way. Bournemouth seemed to be pretty conservative with their play, and we looked comfortable enough on the ball and dangerous going forward. But obviously we'll talk about in a sec. Obviously changed a lot after that.
Yeah, it did. And it kind of felt like it was a bit of a combination, Jack, if we lost our way a little bit, but I think Bournemouth, to their credit, probably started to impose themselves at home. And I think it was their 125th anniversary celebrations as well. So they're not a bad team. They're not the Bournemouth that everyone probably thought they were. They're a solid, probably mid-table team now in the Premier League, and they've got some really good players, and they play a really good way. So, like at home, it is a small boutique kind of stadium, if you want to call it that. But it's still hostile, and their fans are really loud, and they're always up for it. And I think they still have that kind of small club fighting mentality that they probably had as Eddie brought them through the leagues and up to the Premier League and stuff like that. But we just lost our way, didn't we?
Yeah, like you said, we did start well. Isak looked really sharp to begin with, but whatever it was, it stopped working. I always think about these small little stadiums. Like the pitch is probably a similar size to St James's, but it just looks a lot
it looks
smaller.
so much smaller.
so
Yeah,
much
it looks tiny.
Yeah.
And I always wonder whether the players like who are used to playing at St James's and the big pitch, whether they actually are affected by that, because it does. You must get used to that as a home player playing with that in those dimensions and that sort of environment. But what you said about Bournemouth is right. They've got a really good manager who's really smart. They've got good players. They've been spending quite a lot of money. They've sort of this is only the third season since they've been promoted, and they've got a really good team. Like they've got players that a lot of other clubs would be interested in. I thought Semenyo was fantastic. We need a right winger. He used to play for Sunderland, I noticed. So he had 7 games for Sunderland, but he was causing all sorts of problems. But I wasn't sure what we were doing with our formation as well, because it didn't look like the standard 4-3-3. Gordon seemed to be more up front when he was getting anywhere near the ball. So it was a bit unsure about exactly what we were doing. Obviously, Kelly is kind of like a centre-back by trade as well, so he can slot in and do what Dan Burn was doing for all that time. With Tino pushing forward, but it just looked a bit strange. Like it looked a bit disjointed. I think some of our players are still not fit. Like I think that's
we'll get to that later on.
Yeah, for whatever reason that is. So yeah, we certainly did lose our way after the start of the game. But these games are difficult, Like there's no easy. It's a cliche, but there really is no easy game. Like you look at every team this season, apart from probably Everton, who've been absolutely terrible, but they've played 2 good teams, and you're thinking, I don't know if there's any obvious candidates for relegation. Even Southampton and Ipswich have shown a bit in their games. So yeah, and Bournemouth are probably a mid-table team now, I would say. I don't think they're going to be in danger of relegation at all.
Yeah, and it's always hard when you get these, maybe not teams like Bournemouth, but even if a newly promoted team, when they're up in the Premier League, like they're up and about and things like that. It's always interesting to see the reverse fixture later on in the season after they might not have the depth as what more established Premier League clubs have. And you obviously get your injuries and things like that. And that's probably when you find out a little bit more about who's a better team, depending on their depth and their ability to rotate players and stuff like that. But we did throw it out on Twitter, and we'll probably do this over the course of the season as well. If you've got any comments or questions about the game, we'll read them out and we'll kind of discuss them as well. And we had Ian Parry reach out as well, and he just sort of mentioned as well there was a number of misplaced passes that was very kind of Newcastle-like, that they like to sort of show a bit of ball security and things like that, and that kind of led to the Cherries' first goal. Dimi, we had Joel Linton kind of caught in possession, and what I think, given the TV camera that was being used at the time, it looked like he just kind of dilly-dallied on the ball, and Semenyo picked his pocket and then ended up squaring it for James Tavernier, his brother. I'm pretty sure it was Marcus, his brother, Marks. Yeah. So, yeah, with a tap in as well. But, yeah, when they showed the replay, it was from a camera on the sideline. It wasn't quite the broadcast camera. But as he kind of looked up, Joel Linton, it kind of looked like that all his sort of passing options were cut off, and the ones he had available to him were behind him, and he couldn't actually see. And I don't think he was actually dilly-dallying on the ball. I just think he got stuck in a really unfortunate moment where they had Bournemouth players in between where he couldn't get it out, and I think the referee might have blocked one of them off as well, which he just got caught in a shit sandwich and he couldn't do anything about it, mate.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal. He does that sometimes, Joe Linton. He thinks he's a little bit, I don't want to say it sound harsh, but he thinks he's a little bit better on the ball than he is, and
he thinks he's a little bit more Brazilian than he actually is, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's probably.
Yeah. He's not your traditional samba.
No, he's not your traditional samba joga bonito.
Yeah, Brazilian. Brazilian sledgehammer. What do we call him? The bulldozer.
Yeah. He is more of a bulldozer, and he does work better when back to goal spinning and then playing a 1-2 and using his athleticism. So when he's caught in a scenario where you press him, he can give the ball away. And I think Bournemouth were targeting him, especially in the first half. They were sort of trying to crowd him out because they knew he was a little bit lackadaisical on the ball. And
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, it was his turnover, but there were no options. I mean, you saw the reverse angle, and Gordon was sort of just hanging around midfield, and the fullbacks sort of weren't making space. Whoever the centre halves behind him were, I think it was Byrne, he was just standing there. I'm hoping he was yelling out, but maybe he wasn't. So there was a whole myriad of things wrong with that scenario, but it just highlighted for me, like Ian pointed out on Twitter, we were just very sloppy with the ball, and it's 2 weeks in a row. I mean, last week we had 10 men, but we've been very sloppy with the ball 2 weeks in a row. And if you actually track it back, I think the second half of last season, we were not great in possession. We were very careless on the ball. If it wasn't for Bruno either winning fouls or carrying the ball, we were not great in the midfield. So I think it's something to watch with our team and our team structure. I don't think we're great, especially with Shah not playing and Botman not playing, and then Trippier's not playing either. We don't really have a lot of good football ball players, if that makes sense, and it does put pressure on our midfield.
Jack, I think having what you've just said, Dimi, I think the question probably needs to be asked, but acknowledged as well, is for all that we talk about and Eddie wants to be a possession-based team and things like that, are we in fact a counter-attack team and not a possession-based team? Because we've got the players up front that when we press and turn over and go, that's when we look our most dangerous. We don't look a threat when we sort of hold the ball and pass it around and things like that, do we?
No, we don't. I think we touched on this last week as well when Southampton had all that possession but didn't really do anything with it. But that style of football is actually not very entertaining to watch sometimes anyway. But I think what he wants to do is just try and get a bit more control in some of these games. Like, that's not about tiki-taka and passing it forever, but like the best teams generally tend to have some degree of control throughout a game. We have periods of control where we just dominate, and last season where we just score goal after goal after goal, but it's not really control over the course of a full game. Like, I remember the Everton game last season where, we did well, we played well, we had the disallowed goal to make it 2-0, and then we let them back into it. And it's more about, can we keep the ball when we need to retain possession and just control the game a bit better? But yeah, you're right, we are better set up to press, but the problem with that is when your players are a bit off it, like Gordon was, even though he scored his goal, like he was definitely off it today. So then it falls down, and it's sort of like that's when you end up with the gaps. But it was just very basic, sort of not looking after the ball, giving the ball away cheaply. That started creeping in as the second half progressed. But Dimi just made a good point about Gordon, because Joe Linton was actually running forward with the ball in this scenario, and he had the pitch in front of him, but there was just no movement, nothing happening in front of him. So
he kind of stopped,
back.
didn't he? And then he got the ball kind of
back.
got stuck in his feet, and
it looked like he got away with it, but then he got tackled. So
yeah,
like sort of, he's not fully responsible for this because there was no options for him going forward. And then even after that, Tavernier was still just stood there free, 6 yards out from goal. So you've still got to try and defend even when the mistakes happened, and we didn't do that. But definitely, that we definitely need to try and get some more control in these games where we're looking after the ball a bit better. And like I said, that's not having you don't need Pirlo and Iniesta to do that, or Rodri, but you do need your good players to just retain the ball a bit better. And that's just what we struggle a bit with that the last two games.
And it's just about absorbing pressure as well, and having the ability to absorb pressure and not concede at the same time, and just to take the sting out of the game and we're really good at that with our kind of shithousery, if you want to call it that, and just milking a couple of fouls, taking the sting out of the game, and kind of trying to get our way back up towards our goal and stuff like that. But we did try a bit last night. Longstaff he was trying his best to milk the clock and milk the referee and things like that. But it's like we said earlier, it's just everything feels a bit clunky at the moment, and we'll dive into that a bit deeper once we wrap the game up. So after the goal, I think they probably enjoyed most of the game as well, like the better chances, and we looked bereft of ideas really after the goal. And it wasn't until probably around the hour mark when Ringo come on for Tino and Harvey Barnes come on for Jacob Murphy as well, which seen Gordon go out to the right-hand side, which some people have been calling for it. And then it sort of felt like the wheel turned a little bit towards our way. And then 10 minutes later, Lewis Hall and Joe Willett come on for Kelly and Longstaff as well, which I think it probably tilted the game back in our favour. And like we looked a lot better after that, didn't we, Dimi?
Yeah, it's just good to see we've got options on the bench again. I mean,
it makes a big difference compared to last year, doesn't it?
Well, this corresponding fixture last year, I think it was a couple of days after the Dortmund away loss, and I'm pretty sure Miggy got injured as well in the first half, and we ended up playing, I think, with the same 11 or with maybe one change. And
Bruno was missing,
Yeah, Bruno was missing. Joe Linton, I think, was missing then, and I think we missed. I think Bournemouth probably scored in the first half again in that game, and we just never looked like we looked gone. Whereas this game, obviously, we did struggle after they scored, but we always knew that we had that in our back pocket. We could bring on some quality off the bench. And I think what we saw when the substitutes came on, we saw players who were progressive with the ball and players could actually make a pass. I mean, Lewis Hall's unbelievable on the ball. I think he's an unbelievable ball player. He's obviously defensively still got things to work on, but he's fantastic carrying the ball and moving it forward. And we saw Joe Willock's snapshot of his quality as well. He's fantastic when he runs at defenders. And I mean, like Jack said earlier, Trippier, we still can't discount his quality as a fullback. He's a wonderful exponent of the cross and a wonderful passer of the ball as well. So when you have a few more players on the pitch who can actually pass the ball, you'd be shocked to know that we kept the ball a bit better and started putting pressure on them. So I think that the main sort of takeaway that we need to see from those substitutes is, look, if we're playing without our two main centre-backs and centre-backs who can't pass the ball, I think we need to change, if not the formation, the starting 11 from what we saw today and last week, because people forget Shah and Botman, they used to move into midfield very, very often and carry the ball and spray passes and were very comfortable under pressure, whereas at the moment, we're not as comfortable with the team we've got. We're a lot worse than that, actually. So the substitutes definitely help that part of the game for sure.
Yeah, and we had Texie Smith on Twitter just sort of reiterated that as well, with the introduction of Willock and Hall kind of coincided with our best passage of the game, and it was tough before then. we were probably under it a bit. But on the 76th minute, Jack, Harvey Barnes just whips in a nice teasing cross, I guess, if you want to call it that, which kind of eluded everyone. And our man, your man, you were on him from the start of last year as well, Anthony Gordon pokes home at the back stick, seemingly unopposed, which there was a VAR check because I think everyone kind of went, how did he end up there legally? But he was on by a mile.
Yeah, it was, and it started to look like we were picking up a bit. Barnes had that shot just before that as well, so we were wrestling back a bit of the initiative, which was because of the subs. You've got quality subs to bring on. Barnes has got a point to prove. There was reports that he felt upset that he didn't start Southampton after he'd done well in pre-season, and he's got a good argument for that, considering Gordon only played 45 minutes of a friendly. They're obviously just hoping Gordon picks his form up from last season, but I really didn't expect him to score a goal today, like the way he was playing. I don't want to keep sort of bagging Gordon and singling him out, but I think it's just because it's so noticeable from how he was last season. There's such a
lack of energy.
His body language is not as good, and there's a lack of energy. He's not fit. Like, he just, you're listening to him do that podcast he did with Gary Neville, and he's such a focused individual, and he just doesn't look, for whatever reason it may be. And it probably is just as simple as he's just not as fit. He's had such a long season last season. He had the disappointment of the year.
He did have the under 21s the season before, so it's not like he had a full preseason going into last season, and
he was playing
football though in the tournament. Yeah, so that's the difference. He's been sort of kicking around the England camp. Disappointment there of not playing. All the stuff with PSR. Who knows if his head was turned or if he's feeling. But he just doesn't look himself. I think it's fair to say that. But it was a good finish, and like that's what good players do. He's popped up when he's not playing well. He's scored a vital goal, and it was good it was a really good cross from Barnes. Like I saw some people say the keeper should have got that, but if you look at it, it's just a great cross. Like it's over the defender.
Tasty.
The keeper couldn't have come for that, and Gordon's put it away. So yeah, no, it was very positive at that point because it didn't. I didn't feel like we were going to score, so I felt like we kind of got out of jail a bit at that point.
Now, there was a fair bit that happened between us scoring and we'll just say when the fourth official put the board up for injury time. But given the time constraints of the podcast, I don't want to go through a blow by blow of their chances and our chances and everything like that. So we'll skip straight to definitely the most controversial part of the match. In the 93rd minute, corner for Bournemouth, and seemingly scored from a powerful header. And fans are in raptures, and they look like they've sewn all 3 points up. Newcastle players with their heads down, kind of trudging back to the middle, thinking we've just lost this game. But VAR giveth, VAR taketh. Dimi, we were probably on the wrong end of one last week, but we probably had one in our favour today. Well, that was today, actually, because it was after midnight here. You're a very emotional man, and sometimes you do like to sit on the fence. So hopefully you can give us a straight response here and not sit on the fence like you're known to do. But take us through that little, I guess, 3 or 4 minute period in your house from when the goal went in to when the goal got disallowed.
Yeah. So just before they scored, my missus woke up and said, "Oh, what's the score? Blah blah blah. How's Paris doing?" And he's still asleep. That's all good. I'm like, "Oh, it's 1-1. Game's nearly finished." And within 30 seconds, the ball went in the back of the net. And I thought I was quiet and I thought I was being silent, but it was one of those ones where you go really loudly and you could actually hear the words. And there was a bit of a jump from the cot and a bit of a jump from Katie, and yeah, I was ropeable, mate. To be fair, because it looked like a clean header. It looked like we'd blown it, and I thought fair dinkum, Bournemouth have done it again to us, and I was ropeable. But live, like the players, I didn't see any handball. Obviously, I didn't see anything wrong with the goal, but thank goodness there was plenty wrong with the goal, as we found out later on, and definitely was the right decision in the end. And people can laugh and scoff at it. And I saw on Optus that Glenn Hoddle was kicking a fuss about it and saying, "Oh, we shouldn't review those goals because they're too close." I mean, it's black and white. It's either a handball or not a handball. It's not like it's too close to be a handball. So the rule clearly states, and you've got the image going to come up in a sec, Keegs, that the rule clearly states where the ball can land on the shoulder and on the arm. So for me, it was once they showed the replay, and it was pretty clear that it was a handball, and very, very lucky in the end that we escaped that.
Now, just before I bring this image up, Jack, we'll throw to you. You're the governor of common sense, and you're across all these law changes and everything now. And there was a bit of an adjustment to the handball rule before the season started. So we'll bring this image up now. And so for those listening on audio, you might have to talk through it. But for those who are watching us on YouTube, you can clearly see what it is. But Jack, I'll leave it to you to explain, especially to our audio listeners, what the YouTubers can see.
So you've got a diagram which is a man, and he's got a green shoulder, and it says no handball when it's pointing at his shoulder, and then it's handball when it's kind of below, like the arm below the shoulder is handball. So it's really just determining where your shoulder is and where your hand is. And I remember last season there was controversy around decisions when a handball led to a goal. I think there was something to do with a rule where if it accidentally hit your hand and then it indirectly led to a goal, or directly led to a goal, then it was going to be disallowed. Obviously, on this occasion, it has, because it's gone straight into the net from where it hit him. I don't know. This is one of those where if it happens to you, you're absolutely raging. But if it happens for you, you're pleased about it. It probably does hit the top of his arm, which technically is a handball. And there was a bit of beef on Twitter with this between Alan Shearer said it was not a handball, and then Luke Edwards said it was. You've got two people arguing on Twitter there about it. I think Bournemouth just felt angry about the time of the game that this happened in, and they're emotional and they think they've just got a last minute winner. It's 1:45 in the morning, and Newcastle have just fought their way back into this game, and then they've just conceded straight from a fucking corner, and it's just like, there's no hint, like Dimi said at that stage, that this was going to be ruled out. So your heart just sinks, doesn't it? I was just thinking, I've got to go to work soon. I'm just absolutely raging, and we've just lost, and everything's shit. And then within a few minutes, VAR to the rescue this week.
Yeah,
and it just shows you football. Yeah, never rest on your laurels because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But,
so I think as controversial as it was, and I think every person will probably have a different opinion on that, and if it was or wasn't. But I think if you look at this image here, it's pretty conclusive. I think that it does hit him around the sort of bicep area, which according to the diagram is clearly a handball. So you could argue that part of it's on his shoulder, but it definitely looks like the majority of the ball is in and around the bicep. So you can see why it was disallowed. But funnily enough, Jack, that wasn't the end of the controversy for us anyway. Neto is taking a ball and is absolutely coat-hanged by Joel Linton. It was very reminiscent of a clothesline from Howe from JBL. For our WWE fans out there, I could just hear Jim Ross, and I'm sure some person a lot cleverer than me on Twitter will make the video with a Jim Ross sort of commentary, and and we spoke about this before we got on air. It's really head scratching how that is not a red card, and Fabian Schär's was a red card 6 days earlier. Like, it's mind boggling.
And the best thing about this one is you got a yellow card, so it can't be upgraded. So they can't say retrospectively it was a red card. He's just clotheslined him by the neck. So, I looked at it again carefully just before, and he doesn't sort of like put his arm into his neck. It's more like around his shoulder, and but it's really forceful, and he drags him
violent.
down. It's violent.
It's violent conduct. Call it what it is.
It's violent conduct, and it's good to see this in a way, because it's us back to the sort of the dark arts, and not letting them, because it was 2 minutes over the stoppage time by this point as well. So it was just stopping him from doing it. And Dan Burnett just been booked not that long before for a drag back as well. And actually, I think for the corner that led to their disallowed goal, Byrne was again in a position where he could have dragged someone back. He would have been sent off. And I think if he hadn't already been booked, he would have. But
he probably would.
We were doing these professional fouls, but this, I've never seen anything like this on a football pitch before. That must have actually hurt as well, because you've got Joe Linton battering you around the shoulder, the neck. So, this, I don't know how the most one-eyed Newcastle fan can say this shouldn't have been a red card, especially like I said when you compare it to Fabian Schär's vicious headbutt last week. I think we've definitely got away with one this time. So it was all entertaining 3 or 4 minutes in the life of Newcastle United, which
nothing's ever easy. But the game kind of wrapped up. I think both teams could probably argue that they deserved to win, to be honest. But
hang on, I want Dimi to tell me that wasn't a red card.
No, it was a red card.
Right, there we go. If even Dimi thinks it wasn't a red card, then it was a red card. Then it definitely was.
Yeah. But yeah, finished 1-1. Eddie and the people smile. Still haven't beaten Bournemouth since they've taken over. In the league, I think they've beat him in a cup game, but in the league, still haven't beaten Bournemouth since he's took over our club. So we had Wayne as well. Wayne Flanagan said usual away to Bournemouth. We draw more than any result. Very lucky to get the draw without another red card. I don't think the ref had a good game with a patched up defence. We did okay and the subs worked well, which is probably a pretty good summation of what we did. But now I think we might spend 15, 20 minutes just unpacking sort of the end of the game and things like that. Now, it was a very probably emotional as probably seen him since the last time he played at Bournemouth, Kieran Ringo Trippier, after the game. And yeah, he did seem pretty emotional. Now, who knows why? He's obviously he's had a big 24 hours leading up to the game and things like that. Who knows what this week has in store for him as well. But I guess the thing I want to talk about is what Eddie said post game, and I'm not sure what the goal is here. And he's been linked. He was linked with Everton during the week, and if Kieran Trippier leaves the club, like everyone, he'll be getting applause and thank you for everyone I think associated with the club. He was the trailblazer, the first one to come under the new takeover and things like that. But Eddie said that he's desperate to keep him. Now, that seems like a really powerful thing to say if there's other factors in the club that are going to try and sell him. And this has been an absolute shit show from well before June, and there seems to be internal, I guess, an internal kind of power play at the club now, especially since Amanda and Mid had left. They kind of felt like they're all working together in the one direction, and I don't know, Jack. It's starting to kind of come across now like Eddie's losing the control and the power that he had. And is he publicly going against what's happening internally at the moment, do you think?
It's really hard to know, isn't it? I think it's just been such a summer of upheaval. And like, I think the further we get into the transfer window and we still haven't managed to make any signings, like since Paul Mitchell's been there, it's unsettling for everybody. And I think it's probably underestimated a bit how big an impact it is to lose Amanda and Murdad, who loved Eddie. They said they wanted him to be that Alex Ferguson. So is this him being a bit political? Maybe. Rafa used to do this all the time where he would say things in public, like as a power play. Is it just him being a manager who doesn't want to lose it, who is still a fantastic footballer and a good role model and a leader around the club? Like whatever goes on, whatever he's been doing in his private life, he's a brilliant footballer still, and he proved that today. So, or is it Eddie just being Eddie? Like he said that he didn't want to lose St. Maximan the day before he went, so that's just what he does. Miggy as well. Like he'll say it about everyone because it's not in anyone's advantage for him to come out and say, "Oh yeah, he says he wants to go. We're gonna."
He's not, but I think there's a different way you can answer the question without being as emphatic as that. Like that was, we don't want to lose him. We're desperate to keep him is a pretty powerful thing. And he's a smart guy. Like this isn't just an off the cuff kind of answer. This is a really thoughtful and considered response to a question he probably knew was coming. Like, let's be honest.
I was talking to someone sensible on Twitter, which is very rare the other day. And he was talking about.
Did you set up a burner and you were just talking to yourself?
But he was saying that Eddie has not been used to this sort of structure before. He likes to have the control because he's a control freak and he's a self-confessed control freak. So he likes to be in control of everything, to know what's going on, to have input into everything, always with success of the club in mind. That's his goal. But yeah, I think if he can't get on board with this structure, with what's going on, and it's still early days, Paul Mitchell's only been there since the 4th of July, so it's not even 2 months in. It's just everything's heightened at this time because the transfer window, and we don't know what's going to happen with that. So, and people are questioning Darren Eales as well now, like for what's he been doing, and like I think Eddie. He is going to have to get used to this, though, this structure that he is part of, and he's not the main man making all the decisions. And if he doesn't, maybe he's long term, maybe he's better suited at a club where he does have that because he's a fantastic coach. I don't want to lose him. I want him to be able to adapt and adjust to what we're doing. But the reality is it's a very different club now from what it was even when he came in. Like there's all these people in all these positions, and that's the way the club has to go in terms of getting the structure right for success. And that's what all big clubs do. So it's just a period of adjustment, and it's unfortunate. It's just
at the wrong time, isn't it?
It's the wrong time, and it's all playing out in the middle of this transfer window where we need to get a couple of players in, even if just for the boost for the club and the mood as much as anything. But they keep saying, they need to get good players who are going to improve the first team, and that's not easy to do. So we'll see what happens. But it's definitely been unsettling, and I think that might have sort of fed into performances to a degree. Maybe I think we're pretty lucky. We're sitting here with 4 points after these 2 games, and let's just get the transfer window closed, whatever happens, and move on with the season.
Yeah. Now, just on sort of what Jack had said, Dimi, and with Eddie, and I know this is probably a really short straw to sort of for me to bring up, but I definitely remember in 2006 where Bomber Thompson at the Cats was a control freak as well, and there was a big club review, and his job was literally on the line, and what they'd kind of done was back him in and sort of told him he needed to trust the people in charge of the other departments to do their job and let him focus on just coaching the team. And it kind of feels very similar to what's happening at the club now. And like, he's still going to have his say in transfers and how the club's run. He's just not the be all and end all as what he is. And I think, and I did hear Darren Neal speak about that, said that the focus of this was to let Eddie do what he does best, which is being on the grass, coaching the team, improving the players and stuff like that. So this whole sort of structure was to try and bring out the best in him, but he seems to have, I don't know, maybe rebelled against it a little bit. And like Jack said, the performances, how much do we draw out of 2 games? Like, we've played the best part of an hour, a bit over an hour with 10 men in our first game against Southampton and won. Yesterday was clunky, but the first 2 games, even with 11 v 11 last week, it was clunky. And he did say post game that he was asked about the fitness, and he said that the players aren't at the level yet, and they're still building the fitness. Now, as soon as I heard that, it made me think, Dimi, that they've done this review of what happened last year with all the injuries and things like that, and have they come to a conclusion where they've kind of said, look, we've tried to cram too much into preseason. Now, their preseason is very short compared to especially the AFL preseasons that they sort of start November, and we've got our preseason is just as long as the actual season in terms of how long they train. And they're together for maybe 4 or 5 weeks tops by the time they come back from training and start a game. And have they had an investigation, I guess, and I wouldn't say a royal commission. Maybe that's a bit that's a bit too much. But have they adjusted their ways to maybe slowly build and not cram as much in such a short space of time, and have a bit of a slow burn with the view to try and have as many players available for as long as possible?
That's just common sense, though. I mean, the reason we train hard, obviously, is because we protest to play with a high intensity, and we want to be 90 minutes at the opposition. And to do that, you have to train at that level to be able to give those levels week in, week out. Now, the issues last season was, I don't think the training methods. It was 3 games a week playing like that, and a couple of freak injuries, a betting suspension. There was a couple of things unplanned for that sort of hindered our season last year. So I don't think that someone's gone in and said to Eddie, look, you got to change the way you train the players. It's not that at all. But people, I think, have to remember, we're at August 26th. The season runs till May. You don't want to be peaking round 2. So the fitness levels get built throughout the season as you keep playing matches.
And they know they don't have these midweek matches now that...
Exactly. Oh, yeah, exactly right.
They can slow burn into it.
Yeah. And, I mean, there has been extenuating factors. There's been the 10 men, like you said, for 70 minutes. Bournemouth yesterday, I mean, yeah, we weren't great, and there's probably a few deeper reasons around that. But I wouldn't be throwing the baby out with the bathwater after 2 games. And even with Eddie's comments, I'll just touch on what you said about him talking about Trips. I think he's got a bit of a connection to Trips because he was the first player who sort of backed in Howe and backed in the sort of the revolution, and he was the captain of the club, and he was the one sort of the main man to bring everyone else in. So I think Eddie sort of feels connected to him, and because Eddie's lost his compadres in Mirdad and Amanda, he feels a little bit more naked, and then obviously he's not involved anymore in the day-to-day transfer dealings, which is probably a good thing. and he's still trying to adjust to that. So I wouldn't be reading too much about him having a crack in terms of saying desperate to stay. Of course, he's desperate for his players who he's coached for the last 2 or 3 seasons to be there. I'm sure he'd say the same thing like Jack said about Miggy, but you have to have someone with an overall view of the squad and the team, and that's what Paul Mitchell's there to do. And he's the one I feel who needs to be making a sort of an unemotional talk or call on these players, because he's built clubs and he's done very good things outside of the UK. And respectfully to Eddie, he's been a very good coach for us and done great things. But Eddie Howe's coached Bournemouth up from Div 2 into the Premier League, and he's done really well for us. But he hasn't got much more exposure or no exposure outside of the UK. So I'd be trusting Mitchell in doing what he does best. And if Eddie gets connected and gets attached to these players, that's his issue. But I think that Eddie's going to have to learn pretty quickly that he's the coach and he's the manager of the squad that gets sort of put together. But he can't be throwing a hissy fit that I want to be in control of everything. That's not how football clubs are run. And like you said with Bomber Thompson, that's exactly what happened at the Cattery. And I think all for the better. I think once this all smooths down, it'll be a better run club and a much more professionally run club. It's not sort of a mom and pop store where one guy does everything and there's sort of hands-on dealings by one or two people. You have to have an overall.
They need to collaborate. It can't be a dictatorship.
Of course,
and work together and
exactly.
Like
and there's no signs that it is a dictatorship at this point. But I think Eddie's been used to being on the ground day in, day out with Amanda, and sort of being removed from that now is probably a bit of a shock to his system. But look, we've only got 5 days left of the transfer window. There'll be a lot more time to worry about this in January. But I think Eddie's just going to have to continue with the team that gets picked, and I think he'll eventually find his way being just a coach and manager.
Yeah. Now, this is our last thing before we wrap up. Jack, I'll ask you first, mate. What needs to happen this week?
We need to progress in the cup somehow, and I think to do that we might have to play a full strength team, or use it as treat it as a Premier League game really, and get the players' fitness up as well. But some people like Barnes deserve to start, but I think I wouldn't be starting Asula. I think that's too big a risk. I think he's actually play. So, we need to progress in the cup. We need to. It's just for the mood around the club as much as anything else, But the club will not be thinking about that in the short. They've got the long-term view, but just in terms of gaps in the squad, we need a centre back. I think that's quite urgent now because Fabian Schär's getting on anyway. So when Dimi was talking there, I was thinking, we started that game and we had Kraft, Murphy, Longstaff, Dan Burn. Like these are technically limited players, So like to be picking points up with these players, and Eddie does love them. He loves them because they do what he tells them to do and because they've got a good attitude. But like we need to be moving beyond this now if we've got designs on finishing in the Champions League. So I don't care if it's Mark Gay. I kind of hope it is because he's the one they obviously want. So let's just go and pay the money and do what we need to do for him. And I think if we can get a right winger as well, if it's a loan with an obligation or however we work that, I think that would be good. We need to move some players out as well because the squad's going to be too big. So yeah, it's a big sort of 6 or 7 days for us of waking up in the night and checking Twitter and seeing what's going on, with a football match thrown in there as well. But I'm just cannot wait till this is over, this transfer window. I feel like this every time pretty much. We just need to get on with the football, and then we've only got 4 months until January, by which time Mitchell and everyone will be more bedded in and they'll have a plan to attack it, and you won't be coming in halfway through the window this time. Yeah. So it has been a very unsettling and disturbing summer in some ways. So
on and off the pitch as well.
On and off the pitch. So a chapter will be closed when the transfer window closes, and then we can see where we're at and go from there. But I do think those things need to happen for us to get a bit of momentum back into the season, even though we haven't lost yet. But that's what we need to push on, I think, a bit of positivity around the club.
Dimi, I'll come to you, mate, to wrap us up. What needs to happen this week, mate?
Yeah, so we need obviously at least a centre-back signing, but I think we still need a right winger to come in to provide more competition and just increase the quality that we have up front. But I think Jack's right with Gahey. I mean, that's been dragging on for a long time now, and there's been a lot of talk that it's close, but 3 weeks down the line, it still hasn't officially been sealed. I think we've just got to seal it, whether it's today or tomorrow. Just get it done and tick that one off the list. I think there'll be a big exhale on Tyneside if that gets done, and sort of it might change the mood slightly amongst the fan base, even the squad, when you got an England international who had a great Euros coming into the squad. I think from all reports from the reputable sources that you have on the socials, your Keith Downey's, our mate George Colkin, Waff, they're all saying that the Gahey thing is a goer, and the fact that we haven't officially moved on tells me that it's going to get done. It's just a matter of when it gets done, and Palace are obviously trying to squeeze every last million off us because they know this is the biggest offer they're going to get for him. So they're trying to get every last bit of coin off him, and that's fine. But I think it comes to the point now we've just got to get it done and clear that one off the deck so we can give ourselves more than 24 hours to assign a right winger. So I think it's going to be a stressful 3-4 days, like Jack said. And luckily for me, I'm up every couple of hours feeding little Paris, so I'll be all over the social. I've got the notifications on Twitter. If anything happens, I'll be up and about. But yeah, it is good that it's going to be over on Friday because there is a lot of stress. To be honest, though, it's not as bad as it was in the past when we were worried about all our players. I shouldn't speak too soon, but all our players being sold off in the last minute.
Don't say that, Dimi.
But no, it's not going to happen. But I'm just that's what we were worrying about previously. Andy Carroll going to Liverpool springs to mind, obviously. So look, I think we'll get Gahey in, and we'll get a mysterious right winger from the continent on loan, and I think we'll all end up saying, look, it's worked out okay, but we've gone through a lot of shit to get there, similar to the PSR thing on June 30th.
Yeah, it's going to, like we said at the start, it's going to be probably the biggest week in the season of Newcastle United. So stay tuned. If any news breaks, we'll jump on and we'll bring what we know to everyone and stuff like that. But that'll do for tonight, gents. Thanks very much for your time. We'll probably do a Forest review, Spurs preview later on in the week, like I said, as well as any other transfer news, comings and goings that happen throughout the club. It's going to be massive. So stay tuned. Keep your notifications on. Give us a 5-star rating as well if you're listening to us on the audio platform. Leave a comment if you've got anything nice to say about us as well, because it's always good to read if people say nice things about you, Jack. But that'll do us. Thanks very much, boys. And we'll see everyone next time.
Cheers. Take it easy.